I think it was 5 years ago, I started seeing that younger and younger women started coming to me with fertility problems and reoccurring like weird hormonal symptoms. These women were on their 20s, and I'm like, I should not be speaking to these young women about fertility. This whole folic acid thing is a big one. Everyone knows like you need to take folic acid, but please do not take folic acid,
Yes.
but rather take methylfolate.
There is such a debate around that. How does cycle syncing work, and how does it work in conjunction with that follicular phase and that luteal phase, and when is the best time to do that intense activity and more that restorative activity,
Yeah,
depending on the cycle phase?
actually, many women report back to me that, oh, wow, my results are getting even better now that I am incorporating this method.
Good morning, Dr. Sandra Porthan. I am delighted to be here with you today after meeting in 2020 in Finland. Here we are together again.
Oh my goodness, this is so lovely to chat. Thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, thank you for being here. I can't believe we've already met nearly 5 years ago. Where does the time goes?
Yeah, it doesn't seem real.
It doesn't, does it? Sandra, I was hoping that perhaps before we dive into today's conversation around fertility and female health optimization, you could tell us a little bit more about your medical background and your knowledge and expertise around the topic of fertility, please.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's a very good question because actually I started as a clinical nutritionist. So my first profession is a clinical nutritionist, and only after working with women and people, I just discovered I don't have all the tools. And then I went on the functional medicine route, then became a medical doctor, and then started this kind of holistic practice. So yeah, it is now 15 plus years in the making. And I feel like I'm all the time learning and growing and integrating everything I learned. And I mean, you and me, we met in biohacking.
We did, yes.
And I think I got into biohacking like only 7, 8 years ago. And also, you can integrate so much from there. So, my medical practice or practice that I do has grown and evolved throughout the years. And I love learning. I know people who love knitting. I love people who love like all kind of like sports. But I love learning. And that's kind of what I'm geeking out, like just reading things and learning.
I can relate to that quite a lot, actually. So I'm really glad that you're saying that. And could I ask you, Sandra, what specifically compelled you to choose the field of fertility in particular?
Well, that was something that was coming as a request. So I've been working with women for 10 plus years on my private practice as well. And I think it was 5 years ago, I started seeing that younger and younger women started coming to me with fertility problems and reoccurring like weird hormonal symptoms. And these women were on their 20s. And I'm like, I should not be speaking to these young women about fertility. Like, this should be given. And that kind of propelled me to look into it more deeply, like, okay, what's actually going on here? What's going on with the hormones? How is our environment affecting this? How is our lifestyle? Like all of the different like things that play a role in fertility. Just like, yeah, it wasn't my passion to begin with, but it became my passion because the women that I was working with me needed it so much.
And could you tell us what are the typical patient's journey that you go through? When do your patients or women you work with first realize they may be struggling with their fertility? Is that because they're trying for the first time, or they've just had a miscarriage, or they're perhaps already in their late 30s, in their early 40s? Is it sooner than that? What is the typical journey vis-a-vis fertility?
Women that come to me with like targeted focus on fertility, they are usually above 30. But as I told you,
above that.
yeah, as I told you, like there are also women on their 20s that have like really, really imbalanced hormones that also then discover that actually they do need a support. But usually after 30s, usually after already trying few things, also many have already tried IVF and have been labeled as infertile. And we must be very careful with that word because that is something that women kind of get labeled if they inform that they've been trying to get pregnant for 6 months and have not succeed. So it is not like absolute truth. That doesn't mean that you're broken completely. Like the real infertility is around 1-2%. So 1-2%, so very, very rare. But you can be labeled in the medical system as infertile if just you have been trying for a while and have not succeed.
Mm-hmm.
But you shouldn't take it personally. That's what I always say. Like, this is not defying you.
Mm. And it's not particularly helpful psychologically either if you're labeled with
Yeah.
this word. It can actually have a profound negative psychological impact.
Yeah, that's exactly the reason why I also incorporate heavily with mindset, because it all starts like, what is your mindset? And if you've heard these kind of words, or even just having the fear or have a certain age, even that can kind of like indicate to you like, oh my goodness, now I'm too late, my biological clock is ticking and this didn't happen, this much must mean something. So we have to do a lot of rewiring also, because there are stories that don't benefit us in this journey.
So perhaps could we start by diving into what are hormonal imbalances? Could we learn the fundamentals of female hormones with you and the classic imbalances that you see?
Yes, that would be great, because like hormones are definitely my one big love affair. So, funnily enough, with women always come to me like, okay, I need to fix my sex hormones and I need to get my like estrogens and progesterones fixed. But actually, then when I do testing, and I do love to use testing because having some real data helps so much with creating the protocol. Because symptoms tell a lot, but combining symptoms with actual data, that's just like a shortcut to whatever outcome we want to get to. So, the most common thing that I see is HPA axis dysfunction, which means that there is a high level of stress that might have been going on for a while that has already impaired your nervous system regulation. So these women can be really high achieving, type A personalities, want to do everything, even people pleasers, hard to say no, have to commit to every single thing, and then be a perfect spouse and a really good daughter and a really great friend. Maybe even do some work in the community, and they just burn themselves out. And yeah, that you can see. Of course, you can hear it from the story, but you can also see it from the hormones. You can see that there is like the cortisol, the daily cortisol pattern is not ideal. You might never come to the like resting mode for the night. And some women also, like, they are pretty like aware. They might be checking their HRV, and they're coming to me and say like, well, actually my HRV has like gone down a little, and what is this about? And maybe they don't connect it with the stress, but then when I show the hormonal results, then it all clicks.
I see. All right. So you do look into biomarkers then to really get a sense for what is going on within the body at a physiological, biological, and hormonal level so that it's very tailored to the individual.
Absolutely, yes. I think it's necessary also just because then when you have something to show, it is more convincing to the person than just if I tell like, hey, you need to like kind of look at your stress. I mean, we all know that. But when you have some actually proven data and you can look at it on the paper, and then it kind of clicks and makes more sense to do the protocol and actually change. Because, yeah, unfortunately, if you have been doing something for a while and it has not worked, it requires a change.
And how does cortisol, our stress hormone that is often dysregulated with patients that are burnt out or exhausted or chronically stressed, how does cortisol affect progesterone, estrogen, and testosterone? What is the relationship between those hormones?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think it's easy to think about in a way that our fertility and sex hormones, they kind of grow from abundance. So when there is this kind of space, when there's safety, when there is calm, we can spring another life. But if there is so much cortisol and it's kind of stealing everything from the body to also produce so much cortisol and then keep the body in such high alert state, you may see that the estrogen levels are coming down, progesterone is coming down. Often you see it if you do cycle mapping, so you kind of see how the sex hormones go throughout the cycle. This is something that I had to go to medical school to learn. So I did not know my hormones, even though I had my cycle already many years, but I had to learn and read it from a book. So actually, our cycle works in a way that in the beginning of our cycle, we have a lot of estrogen, and that is called the follicular phase. And that is when we create this egg, which can then be fertilized, if that's the goal, after the ovulation phase, which is in the middle of the cycle. And after that, we get the luteal phase, where the progesterones spike up higher. And that's where we can either, if the egg has fertilized, implant it, or if not, then we just create the lining in the uterus and then bleed in the next cycle beginning, if that makes sense. But what I see with women with stress, this kind of tends to go in a way that the follicular phase just keeps going, keeps going, keeps going. They might not even ovulate in each cycle because there's no resources. And then the luteal phase keeps going shorter and shorter and shorter, which means that even if you do ovulate, the egg doesn't have enough time to implantate and get kind of like cozy in the lining of the uterus. So, yeah, I think that's what I mostly see with prolonged negative stress and related to sex hormones.
So, prolonged chronic stress will actually extend the follicular phase,
Yeah,
potentially disturb ovulation, and shorten the luteal phase. Is that correct?
this is what I've seen mostly with women that have this pattern. Yeah.
That is fascinating. And could you tell us more about perhaps when is the greatest window to be, trying
Yeah.
and to try to conceive? Because I think we hear a lot about temperature checking, and there is also quite a lot of myth around the best window. Could you maybe do a bit of myth busting and reality check around that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it is so funny that we don't really know or think about this, even though it is so crucial in both cases, whether you are wanting to have a baby or when you choose not to have a baby. You want to know the days. And that really requires for you to know your cycle. And yes, you can use the Oura Ring, for example, to check the temperature if that helps you to be aware, like, okay, where I am. But I recommend being kind of cautious 1 week around your ovulation. Because, yes, basically, women can be fertile only for 1 day, but the sperm can live up to 5 days in the uterus or in the canals. So that means the window is actually more than just 1 day. And if you want to be definitely sure that this is not the time to make a baby, I would carve out 1 week to be kind of cautious around the ovulation.
Around the ovulation. And if you definitely did want to get pregnant,
Well, then that is the week. I mean, making love is not just about making babies. So, and also we know that there are like so many wonderful hormonal benefits for connection and lovemaking and orgasms that I always want the couples that work with me to be intimate throughout their whole cycle. And it doesn't always have to look like similar, like sex in a way that we kind of imagine. It can be any kind of intimacy. But then, of course, if we think of making a baby, we would want to be more active around the ovulation phase. But if you're kind of active in your relationship overall, then maybe you don't need to think about it that much.
sure. I'm really glad you brought that up because one thing that I've experienced secondhand from a lot of my clients who are going through IVF and going through perhaps entering their second year of trying with their partner or having had miscarriage or having had bad news around their fertility is that they all say to me how much it impacts their intimacy, even their libido, and it becomes somewhat mechanical, a little bit drier, and just a little bit less romantic
Yeah.
or even a little bit less pleasurable, I hear.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what is your expertise on that and also maybe some advice for couples that may be struggling with their intimacy because they've been trying for so long?
Yeah. Well, honestly, that is not my top um, like skill to navigate through. So I often then refer them to sexologist or if there is like a real connection issue. But just like knowing that it is completely normal that you experience this, that usually takes out a lot of pressure because that's if you face some issues and problems, then there becomes the negative stress kind of layered on top of it. And I feel like sexuality and intimacy, they are like parts of our lives that everything gets magnified. If there's something bubbling underneath, in those moments they come up. So it's such a vulnerable state. So just to treat it with lots of like kindness and sensitivity and just keeping the connection alive and it just like cuddling, being close to each other, spending time talking, being real, that is also intimacy. So not putting the pressure that, okay, now we just need to have sex. But understanding and intimacy is so much more. And like, yeah, some women know this and even say to me, yeah, the intimacy starts by my partner taking out the garbage in the morning. Just knowing you're supported and loved and there is this kind of team effort can make a world to a woman.
Yeah. And also knowing your love language and knowing,
Oh my
how
goodness.
your partner responds to it and you respond
Yes,
to it.
yes. I always like give some references, and the love language book is in my references because I think it's such a good tool.
It is. It really is. Absolutely. Because if you're speaking the wrong language, then you're not going to get the result you want, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And you can be doing it like really well on the other like languages, but like if you miss the one that your partner really connects with, that's a really good point.
Could you tell us more perhaps around holistic strategies to enhance and optimize fertility for couples that maybe in that phase where they're struggling, they've been trying for a few months, it's not quite working? What would you start with in terms of recommendation and holistic adjustments?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's my favorite window to work with. Like I love women who come to me and say like I'm like preparing for pregnancy. Like I'm in that time of my life. So, I mean, that would be my dream, that all women would kind of do the work beforehand and not just start trying and then maybe fail and then start feeling bad about themselves and go into these kind of cycles, but rather like, okay, I want to get my body in the best shape possible because I'm preparing for pregnancy. And that's where you start putting yourself first. So to fortify the body, we of course need to fortify it with nutrients. So we usually make the diet extremely good. We start taking the most important supplements. Possibly we even test like, okay, what are your nutrient levels? If there has been some dieting or extreme exercising in the past, this is not the time to try to diet or have like a particular kind of diet in a sense, but we actually just want to fortify the body, prepare it, make it as nutrient dense as possible. Because luckily, the good news is the baby then does get all the minerals and nutrients they need to grow and create this kind of amazing body. But the bad news is that if the mom doesn't have the nutrients, they are taken from the bones and the tissues and the muscles, and then you might feel drained after the pregnancy. And this I actually do see quite a bit, that during the pregnancy or after the pregnancy, women come to me like, oh, I start getting these kind of dark spots or floaters in my vision, or my hair is losing the color. And these are signs that the minerals are just being pulled out from your body, and then we need to replenish. And it's the same thing like when you have a baby. I always say like, okay, with the second baby, be patient, wait at least like 18 months would be amazing. Try at least a year to replenish the body so that you stay well and you have the energy to reduce another human. But yeah,
Is
that's
that what you recommend? At least 1 year between two babies?
between two
Because
babies.
particularly, I would love to hear.
Yeah, I
Yes.
do. I mean, if you go back to like different old traditions, they kept it to 2 years. And they were, or even some traditions have 3 years. And for 2 years, these women were nursing. And that's also kind of the same time you are giving away through the milk a lot of nutrients from your body. So actually, it could be even longer if you have that time to take. I think 3 years might be the most optimal, but I always say, like, if you're in a rush, do please take 1 to 2 years. And also because I do think nursing is so valuable for the baby, so that you get to bond with the baby and you need to like take the time to create that relationship. And I want to say something else, what I always do with women nowadays, depending like, yeah, on their lifestyle, where they live, I do promote detoxification before pregnancy. So, because, and it's no one's fault, it's just the life that we live. But there are so many toxins nowadays, even in our air and in the water. So I teach how to support our body's natural detoxification. And we may even do a functional medicine detox if we notice that there are a lot of toxins in the body, if the woman's really like keen on and wanting to test, for example, for heavy metals, we can actually do a detox program before the pregnancy. So doing all the saunas, doing all the lymphatic draining, doing all the possible herbs. This is a perfect window for that. And I want to emphasize, after you get pregnant, do not detoxify or do any kind of detox programs. So then the window closes. So after that, you don't like herbs are also medicines and all these kind of supplements that we used. And when you're pregnant, I do not recommend using any herbs or even like hot saunas or extreme biohacks for detoxification, because then you just end up putting that into your circulation and it goes into the baby who has a very different ways of detoxifying than you as an adult.
That's really good to know. So, what I would love to do, Sandra, is let's imagine, for example, I'm coming to you because I want to be proactive.
Yeah.
I've never tried yet, but I'm planning to start trying in 6 months. Would that be a good window if I came to have a
Oh
consultation?
my God, I would be so
Would you be
glad. This
happy?
is the
6 months
perfect window.
ideal patient journey? Okay. So can we go and just do that a little bit so we get a sense for what that would look like and feel like? So I come to see you and I say I would like to plan my first pregnancy, at least try in the next 6 months. Sandra, what should I add? What should I remove in my life right now to optimize my fertility and prepare for the first time I will try?
Mm. Okay, I kind of know you, so I would be kind of like happy because I know your lifestyle is pretty good. So, uh, I think I don't need to like push it too much, but like in regular settings, I usually run at least a questionnaire about the toxins and kind of your toxin exposure lifestyle, like just to get a overview, like where do you live, where do you move around, what kind of products you use, what kind of products you have in your home, what's your awareness level, where are you, and also I go through symptoms. Do you have symptoms of toxicity? Very good symptoms can be skin rashes, nose or eye irritation, watery eyes, sometimes itchy ears. If it's about heavy metals, it can be brain fog. So depending on what could be the toxin, and then of course if it's about like you're a massive fan of cosmetics and you use a lot of basic cosmetics, you might have hormonal dysfunction just because there's so many endocrine disrupting chemicals in the basic cosmetics. So kind of like seeing like, okay, what are you using? Okay, one might be the case. We would design a detox program, a protocol for you just to kickstart kind of the whole thing. And then after we have kind of cleared out some of the things, we would start fortifying and nourishing the body with the most amazing foods, of course, always tailored to the person. So I don't neglect any kind of person with any kind of diet. Like you can be vegan, you can be paleo, you can be whatever, because we know with each of these diets you can conceive. But there are like basic pillars like eating real foods, eating organic, eating whole foods, making sure there are, I mean, I based most of my clients' diets on plant-based foods. Like even if you love eating meat and fish and dairy and all that, it's usually only like 20-30%. Most of your plate is still like full of vegetable, berries, all kind of beautiful, nourishing foods. So we would go into your diet and plan out and map out it in a way that you get the right macronutrients and micronutrients. For that period, I love checking on what is your fatty acid profile. So do you get enough omega-3s? Because we know omega-3s do enhance fertility. So just making sure that are you eating fish? Or if you're not eating fish, are you then getting enough omegas from chia seeds, walnuts, or do we actually want to supplement this? And of course, we can also test what's your omega-3 to 6 ratio to see, do we need to supplement? I'm like most cases, I rarely see a woman who has a really good level omega-3, unfortunately. So this is more like a routine thing that we do supplement with omega-3s. If you're vegan, we take an algae-based product. And then if not, then from fish, a really clean source fish oil.
Mhm, mhm.
So
Well,
that's
you
for
don't have to worry about me being vegan, Sandra. You know how much I love my meat and my fish.
but yeah, you will be covered here. You actually might have a pretty good score, actually, because I also know that you're probably not using so many omega-6s, like all the vegetable oils and
No,
processed foods and all that. So you probably will be like my top tier client in this way. But yeah, I love to check the fats and then I check the proteins because, yeah, we are building another body and that requires proteins. And if you don't have them, you will lose muscle. And we don't want you to lose muscle in the phase where you're creating a child. So I check that, and also for your blood sugars, because we know that when you eat proteins during a meal, that brings your blood sugar and insulin down, and that makes the baby metabolically healthy when you're metabolically healthy. And then I also usually tweak it in a way that there's enough fiber and that there are probiotic foods, because we know that the gut microbiome actually gets passed on to the baby. So I want the gut to be perfect, as perfect we can think of. So making sure that the fibers, making sure there are probiotic foods like sauerkraut or kimchi or yogurt or whatever, just to make sure that everything is, the immunity is really good in the guts.
that's really interesting to hear. And how do we feel about things that we should be removing from our diet during that period? So, of course, you've mentioned the terrible seed oils and all that fried
Yeah.
processed food, and that makes complete sense that you would remove that. I would argue that that needs to be removed from everybody's life at any
But
seasons of life.
it will be better.
Um, it would, wouldn't it? But other than that, are there things that you would want a woman to start removing from her daily habits during that window pre-conception?
Yeah. I mean, if we don't think of the obvious ones like alcohol and nicotine and all other like substances, that should be given.
I'm not sure that's completely obvious, to be
Oh dear.
honest, Sandra, because I know that a lot of my clients get stressed from trying, and that
Mhm.
stress leads them to perhaps, drink a bit more or even vape a bit more or even smoke a bit more. Now, of course,
Mm,
they wouldn't once they are pregnant, but that doesn't mean they don't before they try, right?
okay.
And I also often hear the mindset, well, I won't be drinking at all for 9 months. Let me just get it all done beforehand, right?
Okay, that's such
Can
an
you tell us
interesting
about
thinking.
that?
Yeah. Okay, in that case, yeah, I would then definitely check upon that too. Um, because yeah, definitely like if you think of alcohol and how it affects our hormones, it really creates so much problems, not only with the cortisol and sleep, but also with the sex hormones. So I never see a positive outcome with that. And smoking and vaping actually is interesting because of the blood flow. It actually decreases the blood flow and the how much oxygen gets passed through, even in our sex organs. So it's not just that, okay, it's just my lungs. No, no, it is the whole body, and the effects is like way too detrimental to ignore. So no, 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 we do not want to like at least 3 months before I would say no to alcohol and smoking for sure.
Completely.
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 Yes, I do not
Okay, I
recommend.
think that
I don't think
message
it's a good
really
idea.
needs to be highlighted.
Yes, yes, that is a definite like no, no. And this is also something I want to highlight to the partner as well, because I see this very often that the partner can be like, well, I can go and party and I can do all this thing, but actually, funnily, the preparation phase is the only phase the man can have any effect on this baby. Because when the baby is inside the mother, then it doesn't really play a role what the guy is doing. I mean, of course, mentally and in that way, but like physically, the preparation phase is the only phase men can actually enhance the baby's whatever they want to, like mitochondria or sperm quality, whatever you want to look at from it. But like, I think we need to think that this journey starts way before the baby is in the belly.
And that is a message I don't hear very often. The notion that, let's say we have, a couple that is trying to prepare. I hear a lot of women getting familiar with what they need to do to add or remove, but I don't hear many of them telling me, oh, my husband is, reducing his beer on a Saturday and doing things differently, or reducing his pizza. I don't hear that a lot. So tell us perhaps how involved that man should be in that preparation phase to also make holistic changes in his lifestyle. What if the man in question is also a high achiever, very stressed out at work, overworking, not sleeping, drinking socially quite a lot, getting very stressed? Maybe he's overtraining, maybe he's a bit of a cardio lover and exert himself. Is that going to have an impact on his sperm?
Uh, yes, we do see a lifestyle infecting the sperm as well. So, yeah, the sperm is 50% of the process. So it gives half to the baby making. So it plays a crucial role. And what the men or the partner does during the preparation really does matter. And we can see this on men that do kind of check their sperm quality and then make lifestyle changes that you can actually improve your sperm quality quite a bit. So it's also not a stable marker that stays as it is. And yeah, the same things for women, like just the lifestyle, the alcohol, smoking, stress. And for men, maybe even more specific thing is saunas. Because I mean, we love saunas for sure here in Finland. But it seems to be that doing like really hot saunas for men can affect the sperm quality as well. So maybe like kind of reducing or not doing that just before the conception, like 2-3 months, could be smart.
Yes, I heard that as well from Andrew Oberman. He
Yeah,
explained that it's not a really good idea to do a lot of sauna for men
yeah,
during that period because sperm is quite sensitive to heat.
absolutely. Yes, yes, and that's the reason why they actually studied it. And yeah, I mean, it's really like a detailed information, but maybe something like that, if you switch that, can put you in a mind state like, okay, otherwise too, I want to eat better, I want to be more mindful, because making these kind of like changes, they also act as reminders like, okay, what is my goal at the moment? And for men it can seem a bit more, I don't know, it just doesn't seem so real, I guess, for a man to make a baby as it is for a woman. Because for many women, it is like a really, I think women carry a lot of responsibility also for the fact that they are carrying the child, and that's why they are more susceptible to making the changes.
Of course. So, if I understand correctly, sauna usage should be reduced for men, but for women, because of the need to detox, to prepare for the body, then that preparation phase will involve sauna for the female, but not for the man.
Yeah, during the detox phase, I do use saunas because it is such a lovely way to help detoxification, and also a gentle way, in a way that many people actually enjoy it. But I mean, it's not I mean, detox protocols can be anything where from 7 days to 21 days if we do like a proper protocol. So it will be only in the beginning phase of your preparation. then we would move into more like nourishing foods and preparing the body in terms of fortifying it, building up the blood so you have all the nutrients. So we also would supplement uh, on things like folate. I mean, this whole folic acid thing is a big one. Everyone knows like you need to take folic acid, but please do not take folic acid,
Yes.
but rather take
There
methylfolate.
is such a debate around that. Can you clarify? Because I hear yes to folic acid, no to folic acid, and I think it leaves us quite confused. So,
Yeah.
what is the truth here?
But folate is very crucial. So that we actually do need to take, and it's a necessary nutrient. But just being mindful like what form you're taking, because especially here in Nordics, many people have MTHFR, like gene mutation, which means that you can't then get to the active form of the folate from folic acid. So rather take it already in the methylfolate form so you can be sure. So that's kind of like to shortcut that process.
So, how would you know what you need to take? How would you see it from the packages? Do you look at the ingredient? How do you know that
Yeah.
you're taking the right one?
Yeah, if you look at the ingredients, I mean, usually it even says like in the front, but if you turn around and look at the ingredients there, if you look like methylfolate, that is that's the form that you want to have. So just like checking the box, reading the labels, and also of course checking like if it's a B complex vitamin. I see a lot of B complexes nowadays in the pharmacy that have all kinds of like preservatives, and like they're made into some kind of powder that you drink, and then there's even sweeteners and stuff like that. Like don't take that. Just like a really good quality B complex or methylfolate is good enough. So definitely that. And then depending on the woman's diet, we probably will also supplement on vitamin D. I mean, I live in the Nordics, pretty common, and magnesium, because we know that hormonal issues go in hand with deficiencies in magnesium. And unfortunately, many women that come to me also have hormonal imbalances. So those are a few of the supplementations I almost always check and then recommend if needed.
And would you also check your patient's thyroid function in addition to sex hormones? Is that something you will look at for fertility purposes?
If there are any signs, because I do this kind of questionnaire also for the symptoms. So I have a section that kind of checks also for the thyroid. And if there are any implications that this woman might have something going on with the thyroid, then we check. And if the woman is on thyroid medication, that's also something to know. And usually these people already know that when they do get pregnant, they need to amp up the thyroid medication. So it is very important to have a good thyroid function when preparing and definitely when pregnant.
Mm-hmm. Of course. And then this nutrient and this omega we had a look at. Then the next question I have often from female clients is, what about my workout? So, for example, if you're working with somebody who loves to run and they run a lot, I hear a lot, oh, I'm a bit scared to continue to run as much as I run because I don't know if it's good for me. Is there such a thing as exerting our body? How much should we move? How much should we work out? Should we continue as normal?
Yeah.
Take it easy? When it's too easy? Can you shed some light, please?
This is such a good question because definitely you want to keep moving, but not to the extent that you are depleting the body. And I mean, a good example from that is athletes that when they exercise a lot, they lose their periods. So that's a good indicator that it does affect our sex hormones. if you do a lot of heavy training, it usually depletes from the, because I mean, the body is kind of like thinking this is not the time to procreate. This is not the time. This woman is running a marathon, like she's full on. So we definitely want to make sure that you keep moving and you enjoy the movement. And if you're really like hooked on the adrenaline, we might incorporate cycle syncing into the movement. So you can do your heavy, whatever movements you want to do in the beginning of the cycle, but then we ease it out to the end of the cycle. So there is a stage where you are more like doing conditioning, doing stretching, maybe going for a nature walk or swimming or having a lovely massage, so that there is this kind of change happening, that you are not continuously pushing and stressing your body. So that's usually my trick to get women to ease it down a little bit. So not to say that you cannot do this for this preparation phase, but say like, let's do it cyclically. Let's follow your hormones.
So, can you tell us more, Sandra? Because this has been really transformative for me as I love to work out. And I wasn't aware before of cycle syncing and changing the way I train
Yeah.
to sync to my cycles has been so empowering because it's also one I adapt to my restorative work, more yoga, Pilates, Tai Chi,
Yeah.
compared to strength training, conditioning. And I love to do long distance runners. So, it
Yeah.
has really helped me. I know that this could be a new concept for a lot of our listeners. Could you perhaps tell us about how does cycle syncing work and how does it work in conjunction with that follicular phase and that luteal phase, and when is the best time to do, that intense activity and more that restorative activity
Yeah.
depending on the cycle
Yeah,
phases?
absolutely. And it's super inspiring when you get into it, because actually many women report back to me that, oh wow, my results are getting even better now that I am incorporating this method. So it doesn't mean that now um, all your like results go down. It actually can improve your performance as well. But the idea is that when you're building up the hormones, so in the beginning of the cycle, we started talking in the beginning about follicular phase. That's the phase when the hormones are going up towards the ovulation, and this is a good time to increase your exercises. If you do long distance running, this is a good time to do longer runs. Really push yourself. During ovulation, we are usually unstoppable. We can go to the gym, lift heavy, we can do a lot of cardio, and we seem to recover amazingly well. So 2 to 3 weeks around that period, usually you can push really hard. But then definitely at least the last week of your cycle, so in the luteal phase, before you're getting your next period, I recommend that's the week to take it easy. So not doing anything extreme, not a long run, not doing any heavy lifting, not doing a heat workout, but just actually treating your body in a recovery state. So it can be still, you do conditioning, you do stretching, you can do easy yoga, gentle nature walk, but it would be something more restorative for the body. And then when you get your period, it is healthy to rest and take few days off, also at least 1 day off on your period, just to, because you're bleeding, you're losing a lot of nutrients, and then start building it up again, gently, slowly towards the ovulation where you are again running and hitting your goals.
I was smiling when you were saying that because I thought I would share a bit of a personal story on how this has been really helpful, but how it's played trick as well. So I've been doing cycle syncing for a while to plan my marathon training and found it really useful. But when I looked at my calendar and I was looking at my app where I track my cycles, I saw the date of the race would happen right at the end of my luteal phase, in my premenstrual phase, the day before menstruation, which is my worst day. It's for me when I know I'm tired. It's the day right before I have the most amount of potential PMS. I feel a bit lethargic. And I saw the date and I saw my calendar, and there was very little I could do about it. And I thought, okay, this is not good. I can't change the date of my marathon, and it has to be on the worst possible day of
Oh
my
dear.
cycle.
Yeah.
But I would say something though, because I knew that, I then switched my mindset around, right, what is everything else that I can do to really equip myself? So, I took more magnesium, I took more electrolyte, I focused even more on hydration, I drank more coconut water, I had even more recovery beforehand. And the reason I'm sharing this is because, if athletes are listening to us and they do have a race and they see that it happens at a time where it's not ideal and there is little you can do, please don't panic, because I've panicked. I don't know if this is useful to share, but I think when we get educated, it's so empowering. But then if we look at our dates and we have races and events, it can be also very scary.
Yes, and you've touched on such an important point because, like, if you do the cycle syncing in general, it doesn't matter if you then need to push once or twice in your luteal phase because you got the resources. So, so of course, women, we are amazing. We can do whatever we want to do. I mean, we can do what we have been doing for many years now, like kind of living like men do, like going to work every single day, doing the exercises all the time. We can do it. But is it good for our hormones, our overall well being, our fertility? And that's what we're targeting here. So, yeah, that's a perfect story about this. This is for us, this method, so we can support us, but it shouldn't play against us. So, if there is something happening, a big meeting or a marathon on our luteal phase, we will show up, but we also know how to
Well,
then.
did.
And you did, and you rocked it. So, yeah, but it empowers us to know we have the tools to take care of us in the best way possible.
Yes. And to also take it outside the box of just workout. I don't know what your thoughts are, but I find, especially with, for example, podcasting or creation, that I have my most inspired, creative ideas. I have this surge of creation just before my ovulation. So if I can, I would really have those what I call deep dive ideation, where I would do my ideation, my content strategy, my planning, my strategic thinking, perhaps less admin, mundane task, but much more creative, much more, energetic task. And I love that phase of my cycle because I feel very empowered, very creative. Have you noticed something like that? And could you tell us more?
I mean, this is what women report to me constantly, that they feel more intuitive, more in touch with their emotions. They have like visions for the future. They get like bigger dreams on this luteal phase. So I think it might be some kind of time for us women to go inwards and source rather than doing so much and, in the physical world. So I think you're onto something. Yeah.
There is something about it, right? And when we know it, and
Yes.
then we can also manage the hardest part to prepare us for the premenstrual. For me, it's a bit of a going downhill from there. That's not my most creative.
Yeah. No, and I think it's also something that you can just embrace. Like, I personally have this one day where I need to cry, and I always know that it's coming. And if I don't get the cry out, that's the worst situation ever. So I try to put on like a sad movie or whatever so I can really like get the tears out and kind of feel good. But yeah, all women have like different kind of phases, what they need to experience, whether it's emotional or just journaling or, and I think it's really important to make time for that and not just like fill our calendars like every other day, because yeah, it plays a role in our well-being.
It definitely does. Well, thank you for sharing. Is there anything that we haven't covered, Sandra, that you would really like to cover to inspire couples, women, men listening to us who are on their conception journey and want to conceive and want to have their first child?
I mean, we covered really the basics that I wanted to focus on, which are like the almost the mundane things. I mean, in my program, I also do incorporate fertility focus, where we go more into all the biohacks and new supplements and tools and tactics that we kind of know that can support the fertility. But I don't want to ignore the basics and just go to the shiny objects, because it doesn't really work like that. You have to also do the groundwork. And I think I'm really happy we covered the detoxification, hormone testing, and fortifying the body with the nutrition, because that is the foundation where we start.
The one that we haven't talked about as much is the importance of sleep during that period. So, how fundamental is that when we are trying to conceive?
Absolutely. That is one of my like favorite modules, because women always seem to nip everything out of their sleep. So learning to sleep, going to bed at the same time, kind of waking up with the sunlight, so effective for the hormones. And always go through that, like with the nutrition, with the movement, with the mindset and self-care. Sleep is a foundational pillar, and there's so much you can do with your sleep if you experience sleep problems. And sometimes it can be due to your progesterone, like we spoke in the earlier stage. Like if you have a lot of stress and you see the luteal phase getting shorter, you might even notice that your sleep is getting worse. So we always balance your sleep as well.
What would be just 1 to 2 quick win strategies you could give us if we're struggling with sleep, particularly if we have a very intense career and we're high achieving professionals and we are looking into having a first baby, but we are not sleeping as much or as well as we wish we would?
I think easy one, and something that many women don't always do, is creating an evening routine that kind of grounds yourself and calms you down. So if you're not like a meditator, it doesn't have to look like anything spiritual. It can be just that you have a window where you take a warm shower, you listen to a nice song, you maybe do your beauty routines in a candlelight, you dim the lights, you make the atmosphere relaxing, so that you don't just like go, lights off, bed, sleep. Because sleep doesn't happen with pushing, but just bringing the body kind of down. And like, I'm lucky because I live in Finland, in the sense that we have cold. So I've even incorporated sometimes cold swimming if I'm really hyper, but maybe you can do this with a shower as well. And this doesn't go for all, but just something like that can rebalance your nervous system if you're too hyper, to bring it bit down, bring the breathing down, and calm for the night.
I really love that you brought that up. I think it's so important to have a routine. I would say though, cold water wakes me up. So I can't do that in the evening. I love cold water
This
and
is,
cold
yeah,
exposure, right? But if I do it at night,
yeah,
I will be hyper. So it works the other way around for me. I need something really hot, like a hot bath, a hot shower at
yeah.
night.
That's the most common way I see it working. I think I'm a Canarian, but also I do not do it every night, but like a couple of times a week I might go for a cold swim in the evening. This is all about testing like what works for you, but yeah, it's a really good point that usually warm water is better in the evenings. If women have any questions, I would love them to come to Instagram and ask me, or if they're interested, just come and chat. Or if there's any topics we didn't cover, I love sharing more. So my Instagram is Dr. Sandra Porthan. So maybe that is the easiest way to have more insights and inspiration on this topic.
Thank you for spending your time with me today and listening to this episode. Remember to subscribe so that you can receive weekly updates. And if today's message resonated with you, please remember to share it with a friend, a colleague, or a loved one who could really benefit from this episode.